and welcome to the Mindful Being Podcast, where we start conversations to bring more mindfulness into our lives, culture, and politics. I'm Jayme Woj, and today I'm here with Joshua Schubart. Josh is an actor, writer, producer, and voiceover artist. We've only known each other for a couple months. That's kind of crazy. Um,
Yeah.
we're we a few months ago we began working on creating a collective for actors and artists to kind of just come together and share their tools and be support for one another, and kind of accountability groups, all these things to kind of. I think as actors, a lot of times it's interesting because our craft requires other people, but the business side of it, we often feel so alone and like,
Yeah, it can feel very, very lonely.
yeah.
Very lonely.
And
Yeah.
I think it's nice. Yeah, I think what both drew us to kind of the idea was creating that group to have that support and kind of feel like you can root for other actors and that it's not just about competition, all
Well,
the
that was so I've been trying to like be a part of a group like this for a very long time. Just that's exactly what you were kind of just speaking about is like I just want to be able to have positive conversations about what I'm doing, what you are up to, what you're auditioning for and all that stuff without it turning into crazy bullshit.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, yeah, just kind of creating a. It's so interesting because in the entertainment industry, specifically on the actor side of things, I feel like there's this big push to kind of incorporate meditation practices and all these different mindfulness practices, which I think is great. But I think it currently a lot of times has the same problem that mindfulness as a whole has in the West, where it's being monetized and it seems like the focus is on it being monetized,
Sure.
not truly on a fully holistic approach to things. Because so many times I've experienced these things and it's great in the session, right? You're in this mindful place and you're kind of exploring, and then as soon as the session's over, things automatically stop being mindful because there's the competitiveness and there's this kind of everyone for themselves, and it's there I don't feel like there's truly a lot of spaces. There's growing and people are really focusing on it now that help people bring the experiences from meditation, from just mindfulness practices, and actually bring it into their daily lives, as opposed to just being like 5 minutes out of their day or whatever they're doing the mindfulness practice for.
Well, yeah, and that's really important, I think, just because like for so long and even now, and even with what you and I are trying to make with this co-op group is that an actor or like an artist's power is so rooted in community, and how it's often taken away from us is by people breaking down our community places so that we are in constant competition with each other, and we can't like be proud of each other and we can't root for each other, and it just becomes this toxic space where it's harder to make really wonderful organic art once you monetize your art, which is a necessity because you want to use your art to live and eat and pay your rent. It becomes this whole other thing, which is what you were just saying. Like it becomes this whole like mind fuck basically. Like how do I make this thing that I love and that's magically beautiful, but also how do I charge for it? How do I make you pay me for it? And then like if I've got things that work, why wouldn't I keep that to myself? Like why wouldn't it be my like special secret that like only works for me? But if we don't all come together and we all don't like grow together, then it just hurts the whole community.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because whenever I talk about this with other artists or actors, it becomes more and more clear how it's really not unique to us. It's really kind of a reflection or a micro part of the issues we have culturally, because that's so true on every level for everybody. I mean, I think it's just in the the way our capitalist society has been formed. So much of it is about uh, money and having things and kind of getting more and more power or influence or whatever that means. And it's like, if you're in corporate America, if you're an artist, wherever you are, I hear that all the time of people being like, well, I feel like I have to keep things to myself because if someone else is thriving, that means I'm being hurt.
Sure.
And it's kind of, I mean, I think as a society, we're at the point where we're making a choice on, do we really believe in this only one person can win and it has to be me, which means that I have to stop other people from winning? Or is there a way for us actually to come together and all win and thrive together?
Yes.
And I think I'm hoping, and in the things I see, at least in the communities I'm a part of, I see a real push to create those kind of spaces. But it's a challenge when you're in a society that is really shaped. Uh, I don't want to say against that, but counter to it.
Well, yeah, and my personal view on our art form is that it's a clear path to positive mental health for almost everybody in the world. Whether it's us as the it's just a way to, for me, it's a way to help other people through my art. Like that is the easiest way for me to be a positive artist, is to truly just always give most of what I'm doing to other people, just to heal them with that. I don't want that to sound pretentious or whatever, but like that's kind of what the history of our art form is. It's like, the Greek catharsis, having people experience things that they normally wouldn't, through us being able to live it and be in it with them. There's no pure thing, to me at least, as a actor.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, to me, I think all art, right, is about kind of exploring the human condition and our emotional states and how we interact with one another. But I think, particularly as an actor, it there's a focus, even there's a focus on the catharsis, but also kind of on the at least for me, the empathy part of it,
Yeah,
and truly learning about and trying to experience the best of our abilities in a fake kind of safe environment, uh, having empathetic experiences where we understand people who aren't us and find the kind of common ground um, between us. And I think it's what really has led me to different kinds of mindfulness practices and just meditation and these things in general, because I think it just, those practices not only just benefit me in my life, but they really fuel my art.
sure. I
So
mean,
yeah,
acting has played a huge part in my life in just um changing, basically. I mean, I know, like, every actor's like, acting changed my life, or like acting saved my life, but it very literally did. Like, I was homeless and on every type of drug that you could imagine, other than like heroin, crack, crystal meth, when I was like 11 or 12 years old. And I got into the foster care system with like a debilitating stutter. Like it happens now in my everyday life, or like it'll happen while we're speaking now. But it was to the point where I couldn't say 2 to 3 words in a row without it not being able to do it. And when I got into foster care, I was put into Catholic school, which was like two fucking extremes, right? But for whatever reason, I was pulled to the auditions for the school play in 10th grade. Uh, don't know why. Couldn't speak. Catholic school. It was Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I walked on stage and I could speak incomplete sentences for the first time ever. And I knew at that moment, like it like really codified for me, like it sank deep into my person that I needed to do this. This was my calling. And that day I quit every drug and just worked towards being where I am today and just being an actor. So it quite literally saved my fucking life, because otherwise I'd probably be like, oh, like overdosed in a fucking hole somewhere. Uh, yeah.
I'm curious about the stutter, and if you know what it is about acting. Is it just having the lines in advance, or what kind of allowed you to speak?
Yeah. So I actually know now. So I this is through lots and lots of therapy, but my stutter is trauma based from everything that I've been through in my life. Um, I'm afraid to speak, which I know seems insane because I'm an actor. But being able to be someone else, or be a more confident version of myself, or just doing the work puts me in a different place in my mind and my mouth and just everything, where I'm not like, I'm me but I'm not me, right? There's that whole split thing as actors. And also it gives me a purpose, I guess, is the only way that I can say it. So I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing it for you. So I need to be at my best for you. And that's honestly how it goes. And it's helped me in my everyday life to be able to speak too, which has been beautiful. It's been great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. I actually just thought of right before I asked that question because, um, I mean, I obviously noticed that in your auditions that I see, and whenever anything's scripted, there's no stutter.
Yep.
But we did the dramatic improv in a session, which was the first time I've ever done improv with you. And I was just realizing now, like, oh yeah, there was no stutter. I didn't at least pick up on one in the scene the whole entire time. So
Yeah, because it didn't happen. Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating that that I think I think it's interesting because with our president right now, Joe Biden, who had a stutter, and there was a lot of focus on, I wish I could remember his name, the young man that spoke at the DNC and at the inauguration, who had a stutter that met Joe Biden, kind of worked through it. Um,
Right.
I was just seeing a lot of, during the election, a lot of articles about Joe Biden stutter, and just stuttering in general. And I didn't see, I've never heard of it being uh, trauma based before. So it's just fascinating kind of what, I mean, our bodies and our minds do when we are put through traumatic experiences and things that, I mean, we have no control over whatsoever to a point.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, and I know what all of my traumas are. I've been through tons of therapy, and I'm at peace with them. And I use them to like help others that have had the ones that I've gone through too. But trauma's a real piece of shit, and like will just come out and fuck with you when you least expect it. Um, it'll come out when you're talking about it. Like I'm probably gonna end up. It'll happen to my mouth now more because I'm talking about it. But like, um, it's just a thing that people have to understand that with trauma, especially trauma with abuse or sexual assault or like anything like that, like you can work on it and you can be at peace with it, but your mind still blows up in a bomb whenever that topic comes up. And it's not that you haven't worked on it, it's just always there. It's a part of your mind that has been working on compartmentalizing it so that you don't go fucking insane. And that's honestly what it is. Because if you just let it keep exploding in your head, you would be like the fucking Joker, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, just with therapy, what your feelings are, what things in therapy kind of worked for you, what didn't, because uh, I often talk about on this podcast and pretty much anytime I talk about mindfulness, for me, the definition of mindfulness is very much rooted in awareness and personal awareness that then branches out to awareness beyond ourselves.
Sure.
Um, and that anything we really do can be a mindfulness practice as long as we're doing it mindfully. But one of the things that I think is still kind of there's I don't know if there's a big stigma around it or people just I mean there obviously is because there's a lot of resistance to it is to using therapy as a form of mindfulness practice. And the way I've defined it is using it to really learn about yourself and kind of explore things that a lot of times are painful.
Sure.
It's a big thing with mindfulness. I tell a lot of people with meditation is there's this idea that it's very calming and just this peaceful, serene thing where your mind stops. And in reality, it can be very painful because it can bring up a lot of trauma and a lot of things that because certain people haven't been mindful in a certain way, haven't really self-reflected in a certain way, aren't expecting to discover the things they discover. Um, so yeah, I think just going back to that question of just, I guess your personal view after having gone through therapy for so long, and kind of
Sure.
what worked
Yeah.
for you and what didn't.
So I've done like a bunch of things, like a few on purpose and others largely by accident. But so I've been through multiple types of therapy, and I've also been to a psychiatrist who just wanted to medicate me in the beginning, and I told him no. It was like part of the like I when I was began to go like trying to understand what was happening to me. I went to one of them first because like that's what you're told you should do. You need to go see a psychiatrist, and they wanted to put me on four pill cocktail for what I was going on, and I kept asking them like, well, what's that going to do for me emotionally as a blah blah. And it all came down to like it'll mute the way that you feel, and it'll make you kind of even. And I said, I can't do that. I need to have access to all of me so I can, be an actor. And this was when I was what, like 13, 14 years old, like way before I knew even what being an actor fucking was. But so then I tried like classical talk therapy, Freudian stuff, things based off of that. Um, and that was fine, but I just found myself talking in circles and circles and circles and circles about the same shit over and over and over again. And while that may work for some people, it didn't work for me. And at the time, I guess when I don't know how old you are, Jayme. I'm 35 now, but in my teens, uh, cognitive behavioral therapy was kind of like this new hip type of therapy thing that um, it's not trying to like cure you of your problems. It's it's like you have these problems and you probably will forever, and there's nothing you can do about that but keep working on them. So let's teach you a bunch of skills on how to cope with them, how to mitigate them, and how to make you feel like you are normal most of the time. So like I've got panic, anxiety, rage, depression. I'm suicidal, which is a thing that like, and that's a so like when you hear the words suicidal, people think like, oh, you're like always about to commit suicide, and that's not what it is at all. It's you have that tendency, and it's a thing that is kind of always like hanging around in your brain. um, but as long as you're kind of talking about it and you're speaking about it as it's like part of your person, most folks that are speaking about it are not about to go do it. It's the people that like aren't talking about it are the people that you need to like check in with. Like, hey, I understand that you have this part of your mind. You like haven't been speaking about it. Anyway, so you understand that. But like, where's it going? All right, cognitive behavioral therapy taught me how to essentially be a human being again in the modern, like, this is what it is to be a part of humanity in a way. So it's almost like fake it till you make it in a way, and then having an art form avenue to express myself through like was like an added thing to that. So I was able to be this quote unquote normal person who was also kind of weird all the time, because I'm kind of weird all the time, and that's fine. um, but also take uh, all those parts of me that are kind of weird and strange and really really dark, and pump them through a thing that will help other people that are also have those types of problems.
Yeah.
Was that a lot of talking? Sorry.
No, it's interesting because it's very much what I often talk about with mindfulness, and that um yeah, I think there's a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to be enlightened, or there's these, I'm going to fix myself, or I'm going to change myself. And really, I mean, it's true for everything in life. It's a journey, and change is happening every moment of the journey, but it's not really about, getting from here and then taking this leap to this destination that's somewhere in our imagination that we think is going to exist in the future. It's
Right.
about constantly just doing the work. I mean, meditating, it's all like faking it till you make it, really. You're just
Right.
going through it, doing the best you can, and then you keep repeating it, and it's different each time, but it's never quite what you want it to be. And you just keep going. Um, yeah. So I'm curious, because you recently began meditation practice. If you could just talk about what made you want to start, how it's been going.
Yeah, absolutely. So I fucking love it. Um, and I'm really pleased that it came up in our group that we do. So for those of you that don't know about like what we kind of do, is we do like a masterminding accountability thing, and at the end of the week we all speak about like what we'd like to be held uh, accountable for. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to meditate, and I've wanted to for years. But when it comes to me, I would rather do for others than do for myself. So I've never taken the time to actually take it out of my day to do the meditation. And it was really helpful. I think, Jayme, you actually were the one that challenged me to do this, and I'm really grateful to you for it, because it has become a thing in a way that has added to my other things that have been in my life. But it is totally different because So right now I'm using Headspace to do that, and I'm doing a lot of their guided meditation practices. And what I love about it is that it is the most non-judgmental shit I have ever done. Literally, they just say like, whatever's happening to you, whatever's in your head, whatever you're feeling is fine. Don't worry about it. Don't fucking fight it. Whatever you believe meditation is, it's not. Just like be aware of what's happening to you, and whatever it is, that's okay. We are going to work towards these things not happening to you as much. But I love that it's never ever like these things will never happen to you again. Like they don't bullshit you. Like it's like you are in a constant state of practice, which as me as a person, I fucking love that shit. I love the constant working on yourself, whether it be through acting, writing, producing, combat, sword fighting, anything of any of those things that I do, just getting better and better and better and better and never fucking working on it. I love that shit. I love it.
Yeah, it's very much there's a in Zen Buddhism and in Japanese culture there's uh, a saying of beginner's mind of trying to always be in that state of kind of wonder and curiosity and eagerness that a beginner has that often some once you master something you kind of lose because the ego gets involved and
Right.
all these
Get
things.
really jaded. Yeah.
And I think that's it's true for anyone I've ever talked to about meditation is that you just never feel like a master at it. You always feel like it's part of a journey. It's always a struggle. Of course, certain days it feels easier than others and you might have a breakthrough, but it you always kind of I think it's just the mentality of it and just the practice of it. It very much puts you in that place of you're just here, you're now in the now, and you're at where you're at and you go on for the journey and you try to whatever type of meditation you're doing, if there's a focus, if there's not a focus, you're just doing what you're doing it to the best of your ability, and then let it go, see how it does stuff, and then try again later and see what happens. But it's kind of the pushing out of the ego that I think when people really get to that point, they see like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. And I think the problem for a lot of people is they just don't put in the work or give it enough time to get to experience it without a moment of ego. And then it gets harder for them to, the more locked in you are, obviously, the harder it is to let go. And then the more resistance kind of people have to mindfulness practice. So was your, I guess, I don't want to say resistance, but I guess you said you wanted to have the practice for a while. Was there anything beyond just feeling like you didn't have time that was stopping you from doing it?
Yeah, I didn't feel like I deserved it, really. I I wasn't allowed to give myself that time that that like it's not even a lot of time. It's like 10, 20 minutes now that I'm big because I meditate in the morning. It's such a small amount of time in your day, and a lot of it is me wanting to just always be going and always working and always trying to like build my career, whether I'm doing a new audiobook or I'm doing a new role or I'm practicing health tapes now because that's all that we're doing because of the pandemic, right? Like it felt like because it was just for me and there was no potential, we're going to go back to it, monetary gain from my work in the future,
Mhm.
then what's the point of doing it? When in reality, this type of work is the most important work that you can do for your future, monetarily or not. And it will translate into better work, better workouts, better relationships, better fucking everything. And that's what I've found. And I haven't even been doing it for that long. And I've
Mm.
noticed a noticeable shift in just how I approach exercising, writing, acting, our co-op, literally fucking everything. So am I cursing too much for this show?
You're fine.
All right.
It's so funny because every single guest asks me that. Uh, yeah, it's interesting because I remember when I first really got into meditation, and I mean I went balls to the wall. I joined a Rinzai Zen um, Buddhist temple, which was based on like the samurai Zen practices. It was very intense, very long periods of sitting. And I remember the hardest part for me was every time I was sitting, so much of my time I was spending thinking, I could be doing this, or I could be doing that with this time, and just thinking about all the things I wasn't doing that I could be doing while I was just sitting and meditating. Um, and what I loved about that practice is a lot of the focus was on counting your breaths and on certain kind of breathing practices or um, koans, which are kind of riddles that kind of allow you to focus on something that's not very tangible. And that really helped me realize that a lot of the extra thoughts I was having was because I wasn't being present, and being able to ground myself with something, whether it's counting breath or just focusing on breath or having a mantra or whatever people do. Um, I think it helps kind of pinpoint us into the reality of the present, and makes it easier to bring it into the other things that you do with your life. Because I I used to do that a lot in everything. I mean, I would be in a martial arts class or be in school, or you know, out with my family or my friends, and kind of getting distracted and thinking like, oh, I could really be doing this, or I could really be doing that, and I'm totally missing out on the experience I was having. Where once I started meditating, that still happened, but I was able to be much more aware of it, and then say, why am I doing this? Just be in the moment, enjoy what you're doing, and kind of let it go.
Yeah, which is a thing that as artists we should fucking understand, right? Like we call it, like when we're really in it, we're like quote unquote like doing the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what we've been in our, like we've been told, like that's what we're not doing the work. We're having a great time. We're playing around. We're connected. We're like transferring energy. We're being present and aware with people. And like that's when the work is the most powerful, is when we almost don't have control over ourselves and we're just flowing and being and basically fucking vibing, man. Like we're we're just doing that. And it's like we've been tricked to believe that like doing the fucking work is the thing that makes you grow and is makes you better and makes you successful, when it's like if you just enjoy the play and the time and the experience, you'll be so much more successful than doing the fucking work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a harsh, like doing the work is such a, it's like, it's like a, right. So for everyone that's not watching, I just punched myself in the hand.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think this is true for so many people outside of just art and acting. But I think I think the industry is changing a lot, where we are as actors allowed to be more mindful, because I think there's this, and it still exists, there's this mentality of like the tortured artist, and you have to be tortured, and if you're not crying during the scene and then after the scene, like you didn't push yourself hard enough, and these things where I see a big divide in the industry between actors who still have that mentality of, it's not, I mean, it's not, I don't want to say it's method acting, because I know method actors who do this and I know them that don't, but kind of really the mental health of it, of, am I going to allow this to consume me in a way where I can't let go, and it's actually affecting my actual psyche and my actual life and my actual being, versus having the ability to go, like you're saying, go play, have those experiences, whether it's comedy and light and fluffy or really dark shit. But then once it's over, being able to say, you know, that's how I felt in the present in that moment, but that moment's over, and now I'm on to the next thing, and I'm okay.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
really important. Like
right.
I had an acting teacher, one of my first acting teachers, whole thing was like I was in Hamlet so hard that I needed to, in order to get out of Hamlet, I had to go to therapy for a year. And
Mhm.
I thought that that was like, I was like, oh, that's fucking it, man. Like, that's fucking acting. And that's what I did in the beginning. I was, just like a fucking psycho person, just like lost in my psychosis on everything that I did. And it wasn't until I discovered other acting techniques to add to my toolbox that that's exactly what you were just saying. It's like you totally real, like it's what we were doing in um on Monday in the co-op with the improv. Like we just went to really dark places, we went to really light places, we were laughing, we were crying, we were doing all that stuff, and then when it was over, it was just like, so how was that? Was it
Mhm.
cool? Did it work? And that's what it should be. Like it should be like, it should be exactly that. Anything that severely damages you, which, by the way, that's not what method acting is supposed to be. If the last book that's that Stanislavski wrote that isn't added to the modern method workbooks that we all work with in America, he fucking says none of this should be practiced. It's damaging. Only do memory of physical action. That works great. Everything else is very bad for you. But we don't have that here. So, but yeah, I mean, the more specifically with acting, the more types of things that you can add to your toolbox, the better artist and better actor you will be, and a much more stabilized human person for you and your loved ones. Like I love Daniel Day-Lewis. I think he's fantastic. But my wife tells me all the time that if you come home from set as some crazy motherfucker and you go in bed with me, like you gotta leave. Like I I can't go to bed with like Abraham Lincoln and then wake up with you. That's not what I want. That's not my life. And that is a fair thing to say to your partner.
Mhm.
Like a lot of actors are like, well, you don't understand my process. It's like, no, like you got a partner and they have like their life too, and you can't come in there like some sort of crazy pirate at night and wake up in the morning and be like, sorry, I punched you in the throat, I was a pirate last night, right? Like you gotta like work that shit out.
Yeah, and I feel like it's interesting, because it just sounds, whenever I hear stories like that, uh, I automatically, and I don't know if it's my own bias or what it is, I automatically think about how damaging it must be to that person's psyche, and what they must be going through to require that.
Right.
And it's, I mean, it's unfortunate because so many of the times when you method acting, I think is very much linked to, at least in the way it's presented in our media, to, you know, suicide, overdoses, these things, because we hear so often when that happens that, oh, they were doing some role and went over the top and started and couldn't really cope or couldn't come down from it. And there was all this baggage. And it's, I mean, it's detrimental to the people around you, but it's really detrimental to yourself, if you can't turn it turn it off. I mean, there's definitely been times, and I don't use any method whatsoever. I'm completely imagination based in my own personal acting approach. But there's been times where I've been in scenes and it's just got super heated or super. I just had to go there, and you know, it took me a little while to just come down because the emotions were just going. It's not like you can just like automatically stop and be okay. But I was thankful that I had the the training and the resources to calm myself down and know how to do that and what it looks like, because I think a lot of people don't, um,
Sure.
because it's difficult, especially if there's if you have an individual have mental health issues or what, or just baggage or trauma or whatever it is. um, it's hard not to bring that into the art, because we're, yes, it's imaginary, but we're still us, we're still doing it, we still, it's us crying, it's us, you know, having tension, it's us doing the things that we're doing, even if we're not necessarily emotionally connected as if it was our own experience.
Yeah.
um, and I'm glad to see much more conversation kind of around the mental health of actors, because it is an important issue.
One of my last, like, I would say, like, great big acting teachers was in grad school, and he was Russian, and he came at us with a technique that, um, I won't get into the whole thing because that's not what this is about. But in my mind, the way that I took it and the way that I practice it is that it becomes almost like a, um, the only way that I can really describe it is like it's almost like a spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
It's, um, a belief that kind of goes directly with what I believe acting is for. Is so basically the whole concept is that every person has, will, and is going to experience everything that has, is, and will happen ever. And it's your job to just, basically tap into the ether of our world, to like, to like tap into the, I guess, energetic sphere, or like, or like energetic consciousness, and just allow it to enter you, flow out of you, and then be over with. And, there's lots of exercises, there's lots of practices, there's lots of everything to just kind of, I mean, we would call it, I suppose, living in a truly organic way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or living in a, in like the truest possible truth, right? But it's also allowing it to immediately, or as quickly as possible, get the fuck out of here so that you're not being eaten up by it. And it really resonated with me, and it really connected with me, and it also allowed me to take everything else that I'd learned, whether it was method or and Bogart or Suzuki or Meisner, or what else did I do, Chekhov, and just like really take the best parts of that and really help me understand the best parts of this and smush them all together. And just the idea that you're allowing some sort of other energy into you to express itself through you just was very um, attractive to me, I suppose. I like that idea that you are one with this and it is one with you and you are sharing it with everybody else. It made me feel like, I don't know, it was important.
Mhm. I mean, it just sounds very mindful and in general. And yeah, it's interesting because I don't know, right? I never know because I've had a mindfulness practice for so long, and it's hard to tell like what part of me influenced by mindfulness practice versus what has parts of me has my mindfulness practice influenced.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I find that, and I don't mind staying on the acting technique stuff because I think there's a lot of parallels to mindfulness practice. But I think again, what gets me going as an actor is the empathy. I love just, I'm a very big believer, and I had an acting coach talk about this once, that as humans we are all, and this is scary for a lot of people when I say it, we are capable of everything that is possible. We are capable of the biggest good, and the biggest evils are within all of us, and it
Yeah.
just is depending on our conditioning, what experiences we have, how much we're forced to do, and what kind of things we experience. Um, and I think as an actor, I try to bring that into whatever I'm doing. And I don't like bringing, my own experiences or things in it, because I feel, at least for me, it makes it hard to stay present and stay in the moment with what I'm doing if I'm having to think about something from my life. I always felt, whenever I tried to do that, I felt like, oh, I'm in the scene, and now all of a sudden I'm out thinking about this thing so I can cry.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and that was just for me. But I think whenever I talk to other actors or just artists in general, uh, one, everyone's different, so different things work for different people. But I feel like the overarching theme is that people are seeking a way that works for them to be more playful and be more in the moment and not have these distracting thoughts or these things distracting them, which is very difficult for an actor, because especially for a film actor, when you are thinking about, you're not just in the scene, you're thinking about the camera, and you're thinking about the direction you just got, and you're thinking, oh, my light, and oh, am I
Right.
too, did I just hit the boom mic, or like, you're thinking of so many different things, which, I mean, that's life. Like, that's how life is. You're never just really doing one thing. You're always kind of multitasking what's in your surroundings, where you're going, what's happening. um, and I think it's about
Survival is,
learning.
it's
Yeah,
huge.
it's learning about how to be present with all of it, at once, or picking and choosing what you don't need to be present for, so you can be present with what's important. Because that happens too as an actor, where it's like, okay, there's 10 things, I can't possibly focus on all this. These are the three things that are the most important thing for me to focus on. I'm just going to do those. And if stuff needs to be adjusted based on that, then we adjust. But because I see that a lot too with actors and with everyone, it's that you realize that there's all these things you have to be focusing on, and it becomes so overwhelming that you can't focus on anything.
Right.
Um, so,
One of the things that I learned how to do, and it's pretty recent, I would say in the past 6 or 7 years, um, is I tried to figure out like the really high level successful actors, and this is probably gonna like move away from mindfulness for a moment and like kind of into like business practices or whatever. But maybe not, because it's kind of the same thing, because it is a practice. Is so anyway here. So um on so it's kind of like parallels with you being the best business person that you can be for your career, is if you look at what entrepreneurs do every day, and it's a lot of small innocuous tasks, quote unquote, that you do over and over and over and over and over again until they become part of your person as just routine. So it's like becoming a master of your craft, like the 10,000 hours, and then you're a master. So it's kind of like that too. Like, we've got one part of our thing, but you can build and build and build on the things that you have to make you even better and better and better. So like, it's why I'm always talking about, like, I'm practicing this by myself, or I'm doing this by myself. And it was a big part of this acting technique too, where it was like the equivalent of like a musician playing their scales, which is, this is what you need to know, like, it's in the back of your head constantly, and it will inform everything else that you do. So what else can you make like that in your life? And that can be mindfulness, that can be like how to hit your mark, it can be how to be in your light, it can be how to be in your shot, it can be where is the boom, it can be what is this direction. It's just like doing the same things that can be annoying as hell after a while, but doing them until they become like breathing or blinking or sleeping, like these like autonomic exercises, or these autonomic functions that we do in our bodies. When they become so part of your life and
Mhm.
most other people don't do them, that's what makes you successful. And the reason that people don't do it, and the reason that people don't do mindfulness, is because it's fucking hard and it's annoying as fuck, and you don't want to do those things, but you got to do those things in order to get what you want with anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the key to that though is keeping that beginner's mind that we were talking about, and
Sure.
also the curiosity to want to improve, right? Because I think the problem that I see with a lot of people is they want to get to a habit so they don't have to think about something, right? And it's so, and the question I always have is, well, what was your foundation for creating the habit? Because if your goal for creating the habit is just, I don't want to really have to even I just want to be able to go on autopilot so I can zone out because I don't like what I'm doing. Normally people get sloppy. There's not a strong foundation because there wasn't the mindful care in establishing the the ritual and the patterns needed to form that. And I think the people, like how you're expressing, when you have true curiosity and you want to keep building on top of each other, there's the desire for the habits you have to be positive habits and to be well formed habits, that are going to truly support the the growth. Um,
Well, it's really interesting that you use the word ritual, right? Because that's exactly what it should be. It's when you are doing that, when it's ritualistic, it's so much more important, and it's so much more like, it gets into into spirituality and things of that nature. But there's a whole level of importance there, that it's like, this is what I'm doing ritualistically, as opposed to, this is a habit that I want to form, so
mhm.
I don't have to think about it. One is extremely mindful, and the other is, I don't want to say lazy, but kind of, right?
Mhm.
So lazy. I'll just fucking say it. It's lazy. And it's not that you have to treat it as the type of thing, like it's not like religion based, but it's just that yeah, like the curiosity and the questioning and the it's really the importance of the practice, which is I guess what we've been talking about the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Is what does it mean to you? What does this thing what is this thing going to translate into for you later on, and what does that mean, right? Am I just kind of
Mhm.
talking in a circle? But yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You're not talking in a circle at all. And I think that's why uh, I think as humans, as human beings, we often, I mean, we do tons of things subconsciously that we're not aware of through that have been developed through habits. And I think on the other side of it is one of the things I loved about uh, Zen practice was things like when we would do tea ceremonies and, eating together, and you would bring this intense mindfulness to the way you poured and received and drank tea, for just one example. And it's such a different experience to like realize all the steps and all the things we do, and all the things we miss because we allow ourselves to kind of go on autopilot, which we have to survive. Like you
sure.
can't possibly be aware of every single thing you're doing. But I've at least found it to be an interesting experience when you, things that have been mundane your whole life, you bring an acute awareness to and experience it in a very new way. It's very enlightening, for me. I mean, I don't know if you've had any like experience like that in your meditation practice, um, since it's so new. I mean, are you finding specific things that it's affecting in your daily life?
Yeah, there was one thing specifically that happened recently, and it was about, honestly, it was about a person in my life that I didn't realize was making it much more toxic. It was extremely toxifying, and I didn't realize what it was doing to me. Um, and one of the things that meditation does is that, which I liked and was also kind of scary at first, was that all of the things that I am constantly keeping under the lid using cognitive behavioral therapy practices, it all just kind of like floats up. And I've got to look at it, deal with it, and I have to make a choice about what I'm going to do about it. Um, so it was just a person that kept, it was like they were invading my time, right? And I didn't understand. Like it was the first time that this had happened in this type of practice, and I kept trying to be like, let's, what the fuck? Like this is my special time with me and my mat, and I just need to chill. But when I stopped trying to push it away and it came in, and I used the time to like, well, what the fuck is this? Like, why is this bothering me now when it's not supposed to? It really brought me to some really positive conclusions, and I came out of it and I made a bunch of changes, and it has been, honestly, I didn't realize, just looking at what they were putting on the internet was subconsciously making me insane. And I didn't realize that that was happening. And I was doing this thing where I was like, I've known this person for a long time. This is the type of person that they are. And I just have to accept them for who they are. Trying to be like a positive person and be accepting of all people. And doing this mindfulness practice made me realize that I don't need this fucking shit. Nobody does, in fact. And I don't need to give it air anymore because I need to be a quote unquote good person. I need to do what's best for me and my family over how this person I feel should feel like they are also accepted in the world. So that was really cool. And normally that would have taken me weeks of trying to, because I do like every, like I like process what's happened in the week in my head using all of my other type of things that I have, and using just what I learned in therapy, it would have taken me a longer time because I noticed that I was stuttering more, and that's a huge sign for me that there's something wrong in myself. So when that starts happening, I begin to like analyze using my like analytical brain. But the meditation thing just literally just like popped it right up. It was like, here it is. And I was like, oh boy, I love this shit. And that's what happened. And that was great.
Yeah, it, I think it's interesting because a lot of the people I talk to, and I don't know if it's just that uh, people pleasers and people who really want to be of service to others are drawn to meditation. But one of the common things I hear, and I definitely experience myself, is when you're the type of person who is kind of a people pleaser and really puts a lot of focus on wanting to be of service for others, the first thing that kind of gets neglected is ourselves.
Yep.
And within mindfulness practices, I think it shows how taking care of yourself is such a requirement to being able to be of service to others.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's interesting about kind of cutting people out who are toxic or are um, just not good for our own mental or emotional health. I remember this was maybe like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. My first podcast, Civil Discourse, I had a guest on who was a drug addiction advocate and whose son was a struggling addict for decades. And one of the things she said that really stuck with me was she talked about the journey of her own realization that at one point she just had to let her son do what he was going to do, and if
Mm,
it meant it was going to kill him, she just had to stop trying to control the situation because she felt like she was just constantly making it worse and destroying the rest of the family and destroying herself. And as soon as she was able to get to the point where she just said, what's going to happen, you have to figure it out for yourself, I can't be the person who fixes you,
right.
things became a lot easier for everyone involved. um, and that's not to say that if someone's struggling with addiction it means you just automatically don't try to help or whatever. It's just her experience. But I think a lot of the time that's a very hard, then that's an extreme situation. But I mean, yeah, we have to take care of ourselves, and we can't uh, always allow ourselves to be abused because we're trying to help someone else or we feel like someone else needs us.
Right.
It's
And
a
especially with that, like with addiction, it's a whole nother thing. And it absolutely has nothing to do with the person who's trying to help, right? Like a a person that wants to get that wants to get sober, it's their decision that they make however they come to it on their own. And it largely has nothing to do with how the people that they love feel or how it affects them. So, I mean, that's a very important thing with that, and also with, yeah, man, it's a very important life thing too. Like just knowing that most people are going to do what they do because they want to do it, and you can be as mindful of other people or of um, situations or of what's happening in the world as you want, And there's just going to be people that just don't give a fuck about anybody else, or they're not educated about the things that you are or other people are, and they just don't want to, or they don't care, and they just spew forth bile bullshit, and that's just what they do, and
Hmm.
that's their that's their truth. And for right now at least, or maybe forever. And you can either, you know, go crazy and like beat your head against the wall, which I did for a long time, trying to help them. Um, but like, or you just walk away. That's a very, I'm happy that you spoke to that person, because I mean, it's a lesson that I learn all the time. I'm like, obviously I'm still learning it because it just fucking happened. So, um, yeah, I mean, people need to hear that as many times as they can. And yeah, cool, man. That's awesome that you spoke to that person. It's great.
Yeah. And I think for me, the thing that was really helpful, and I don't know, because I was very much a a fixer when I was younger, in my teens and in my 20s. Um, I just, I sought out people who were damaged and thought like I can be, I can save them, I can fix them. And somewhere along the way, I realized like, no, you don't like trying to force someone to do something is never is almost never productive. What
Right,
I find productive is, be the example of thriving.
right,
I do it in my mindfulness practice. And as long as I can live, mindfully and share that, then it's up to the individual to see that and say, oh, how do you do that? Tell me more about it or whatever, or I need help. Can you help me? And I'm there for them. But it's not my job to force them to feel a certain way or think a certain way or be a certain way. And that was very freeing, and
mm,
scary at the same time, because it forces you to, I think a lot of it was, yeah, me not wanting to kind of look at myself, so I would put so much energy on everybody else. But uh, at the end of it, I found it very freeing.
cool. That's great.
Yeah. So we're now over an hour.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know how
so,
long your show is, so
uh, did you have any, I guess, parting wisdom, for anyone who is out there contemplating starting meditation practice for the first time?
yeah, I would just say don't be like me, and and give it a shot. I'm pissed that I waited as long as I did, and I know that's not very mindful or whatever. But like, I would have loved to have began this many years ago. And I know hindsight's always 2020, but just don't wait. Like, don't make excuses about why you don't deserve it or why it's not important for you, or you know, you have the time. Everybody has the time to literally just lay on the floor or be in a chair. You can do it for 10 fucking minutes. Like, it's not like a law. You don't have to do it for a large amount of time. And there's like Headspace. There's a lot of free shit. And if you like it, you can pay more and do more shit, or you may not like it at all, but you'll know. And knowing is half the battle. Am I right?
That
That's
is
right,
really
90s
cool.
kids.
I love that. Yeah, and there's just like, I mean, there's so many resources. Like you can really, there is something literally for every way of thinking and every way of being
Right.
to find a mindfulness practice. At, I mean, location does matter to a point, but there's in most major cities in the US, there are Buddhist temples that really just focus on meditation, and it's not about prescribing to a specific religion. There's people of all religion going, and they're free or just donation based. What you can, what you want to give, all the way up to, I mean, if you want to spend thousands of dollars and go on a retreat and do a thing, you can
Right.
do that too. It's all kind of what you want out of it.
I would say that no matter what it is, whether it's meditating or like any other type of mindfulness practice, just carving a little bit of time out of every single one of your days to just do something for you, no matter what it is, whether you like to cook for yourself or you like to read a book or you just go for a walk or you go sit in a park, whatever the fuck it is that you do, like you're allowed to do that shit for yourself and you should do that shit for yourself because no one else is going to do it for you, babes. It's all you. Yeah.
It's so true. I love ending on that. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me. Yeah, I'm really jazzed now. That was a really great convo.
Yeah, this was fucking great, man. This is not what I expected this to be at all. And um, thanks for having me and for hearing part of my story and for having this cool conversation with me. It was great.
Yeah, thank you. And we will see everybody, or you will hear us next time. Thank you.
Bye bye.